be very pleased to invite to join us here Andy Sau. Where is Andy? Andy, come up here. So Andy is managing director. Yes. Oh, yes. He's already bringing our man. Hernan. Sure. Good to see you. For the first time, Hernan joining us here. Hernan is a founding partner of Kazakh Ventures. We're so glad that you are here. First time at our conference. It's going to be great to catch up with you. And I just want to say that I'm also very thankful to Andy because he's been supporting Bay Brazil both as a board member for many years and as a corporate member in his role at Silicon Valley Bank. Obrigada, Andy. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Andy Tsao, and I'm a managing director at Silicon Valley Bank. Let me scooch into this chair here. And I'm also head of what we call our Global Gateway business at the bank, and that's a team that's doing business development in new and emerging technology hubs. And Brazil in Latin America is one of the markets that we have been doing business development, and it's really the start of our. Well, actually, we're well into our 6th year of doing business development in the region. So while I am not Brazilian, I am what Margarita refers to as a Bay Brazilian, and very, very happy to be part of the Bay Brazil community and having been on the board and part of this conference for the last couple of years. And I think as Ron noted, this is the first time we're in San Francisco, and it's been a fantastic turnout. Great day, and hopefully we can do it again here in the city. So I know we're closing out the day, and we are the classic last panel before drinks. But you know, in my humble opinion, I'm not talking about myself here, but we've saved the best for last, and. You know, with Hernan Kazaa, who, as Margarita introduces, is one of the founders of Kazakh Ventures, one of the leading venture capital firms in Latin America, and also one of the founders of Mercado Libre, perhaps still today the most successful tech and innovation business to come out of Latin America, although Hernan is certainly working on some that will overtake Mercado Libre perhaps at some stage. So we're going to start, Hernan, with really your journey at Mercado Libre as we started. There's a special connection here to the Bay Area, and we spent last week. Hernan was here with many of the Kazakh founders and friends at Stanford, and of course. That's where the Mercado Libre story started. So maybe in a quick synopsis of how the Mercado Libre came together at Stanford GSB.
Sure. So in the late 90s, so ages ago, I was a student at the MBA program at Stanford University. And as a few of you may remember, given that I see a very young crowd, those were very particular days of the internet. It was right after the launch of Netscape, and that started a tremendous revolution, making the internet very accessible for everyone. So we came here when that was really taking off big time. We realized of the opportunity that was creating for people that wanted to start businesses and had no experience whatsoever. So seeing what was happening here, we wanted to take part of that to Latin America. I was a friend and classmate with Marcos Galperin, who's still the CEO of Mercado Libre. And I started working on a project. He started thinking about Mercado Libre. Luckily, I dropped my project and partnered with him. We graduated in June 1999, raised some capital through Stanford, and a professor there connected us with some investors, and that got the thing going. We went back to Argentina, launched Mercado Libre in Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, And fast forward several years with lots ups and downs, as you can imagine. We IPO'd the company in 2007 in the Nasdaq. I stayed there for a few more years. And in 2011, I left the company. I was ready to move on and do something else. I partnered with Nicolas Sekassi, who unfortunately could not be here today, but he was with me during these days, and he was the CFO of Mercado Libre. I was the COO, he was the CFO of Mercado Libre. During all those years, we worked together and with Marcos in a very small room for several years, making lots of decisions about the company, and launched Kasek Ventures with the idea of hopefully finding the next Mercado Libres throughout the region. We think that the kind of trends that we see here, that we see in Asia, will also, or are also happening in Latin America, and hopefully want to be part also of that revolution and help in the creation of new companies that will become the next large emerging enterprises from Latin America.
So is it correct that Mercado Libre was the very first technology company from Latin America to list on NASDAQ?
I think technically, during the crazy days of 1999, 98, there were a couple of companies from Latin America, or at least that had some strong connection with Latin America, that went public. As it happened with many of those companies, as soon as the Nasdaq crashed, all those companies disappeared. So we can say that it's the first sustainable company from Latin America that went public in the Nasdaq.
And today, $14.5 billion market cap, pretty successful, valuable business. I'm sure along the way, there were probably near-death experiences, et cetera, at Mercado Libre. What were some of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome in terms of getting to that IPO and getting to that success?
Yeah, certainly, as you know, when someone looks back and tries to recreate the story of what been successful companies, from a distance it looks like a very nice upward trajectory. Clearly, it is not the case. All companies, even the most successful ones, have had their moments of at least big challenges or even being close to death. In the case of Mercado Libre, we had a few of those. One of them was we started the company during the boom days, so raising capital was ridiculously easy. We had a company with no revenues whatsoever. We had a company with basically no users whatsoever. And actually, there were no internet users in Latin America at the time, because internet penetration was 3%. All of those users were dial-up users. But we believed in the future, and we certainly, if you look at the company today, what we promised happened, maybe a few years later, but ended up happening. But we raised capital there. So with this company that I was describing, that was just an idea almost, we raised more than $50 million. Today we think that things are a little bit crazy around here, and maybe they are, but those days were also very crazy. So we raised that capital, but the reality is that we first raised around $10 million, and thinking that capital was infinite, we spent that way too fast, and we needed more capital to maintain the business going. We had no revenue, we had nothing, so without investors' money, we couldn't do much, and went to the market very confident, thinking that, of course, money was going to appear, and suddenly the Nasdaq started to crash. We went to the market in March, and that was exactly when, if you look at the chart of the Nasdaq, was when it started to go down. We said, okay, it's just this week, but it kept going down, 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 down. It was up to 5,000. went down at the time all the way to 2000, and then kept on going down. I don't know how, but we ended up closing that round. I remember that initially we received like, I don't know, I don't want to exaggerate, but like 5, 6, 7 term sheets from great investors. And by the minute, they started disappearing one after the other one, and we were left with none. Somehow our investor, plus convincing someone in one of those organizations, we could close that round. When we closed it, we had a negative equity of $10 million. So not only we had spent those first 10 million, but we had overspent another 10. So we were in the red. Luckily, we closed that round. I always say, and I like to do analogies with sports. I like a lot of sports. And it's like if you play that game 20 times, 19 times you lose. I don't know how we won. We were lucky, convincing, but I say it's more luck than being convincing. And we closed that round. And with that, we realized that things had changed forever, that now businesses were going to be more rational, and that we had to produce our own sustainability. So we completely changed the focus of the company. We very rapidly grew from a garage in Buenos Aires, 3 people, all the way to 200 people in several offices. We closed the round and basically cut headcount by half. People thought, no, you're crazy. When a company raises capital around the size you've closed, you increase the number of people. You don't reduce. You don't understand. Things have changed. No, you're ridiculous. By the way, marketing is not going to be 100. It's going to be 1. No, how come? It's ridiculous. No. Look at the number of users we have. Look at the number of internet users that we have out there. We're using a bazooka to kill a fly, so it makes no sense. And we adjusted everything down. And then 6 years later, we went public at the NASDAQ with half of that round in the bank. So that was one very, very challenging time. I remember that we would shut down a door at the office with Marcos and think, what the heck are we going to do? And cry inside the room, and then open the door and say, no, everything is fine. The investors are calling us. Don't worry, keep on working. But we're very, very challenging times. And then interestingly, we closed that round. The business never stopped evolving. The thing that it was starting from a very, very, very low base. So you really had to be patient. But it was growing and showing traction, and more users, more buyers and sellers interacting on our platform. But a year and a half later, we had the opportunity to partner with eBay, that at the time was an incredible company. It was like today, I don't know, Amazon, Apple, and Google combined was the only profitable tech company. They would look down on Amazon, on Yahoo, on everyone. And they wanted to find a partner in Latin America. And at the time, we had a few competitors that were left. And we said, okay, if they choose us, fantastic, because that will give extra confidence to the team, will give extra confidence to the investors. Somehow, it will guarantee our exit, something that did not happen at the end, but we thought that that was the first step of a final acquisition of Mercado Libre by eBay. So we were really happy that that could be the case, so we worked very hard to get that deal done. And we were also very concerned that if eBay ended up choosing someone else, that was going to be very challenging for us, even that I think it would have affected us personally in terms of the conviction that we had on the future of the business, but even more so for our investors or our employees. But luckily, again, we did everything we could to convince eBay that we were the best partner, and they selected us. And we started negotiating the deal, not a very complicated deal. Luckily, because we were burning cash, they didn't want to consolidate much of the company, so they wanted to maintain ownership below 20%. But if they had asked at the time 50%, would have given away because we had no other alternatives. But that kept the total ask at that level. And they have been a good deal for us. In exchange for our shares, they gave us an asset in Brazil that was relatively significant. And by consolidating Mercado Libre's operation with that operation, we became the #1 player. And as network effects kick in this industry, once you are larger than your competitors, that only accelerates. And we could win that battle against the remainder competitors. But long story short, we're very happy that they had chosen us. We went and told the board, and some of those investors that we had convinced a year and a half earlier in those critical times to invest in the company were very skeptical of the future of Mercado Libre and said, you know what, if eBay doesn't want to buy the company now, they will never ever buy it. So let's shut down the company now and return whatever is left in the bank to the investor, because we prefer to I don't know, lose 10, 20 million and not 50. And that was hard. It was the only time in the history of the company that we had voting at our board. And that investor was Goldman Sachs. And they put lots of pressure to the rest of the investors and the rest of the board members to shut down the company. And because that round had been so difficult to close, you can imagine that we gave away several rights. So the investor had majority at the board and could force whatever decision they wanted to force. So we had to convince the other investors that it made total sense to keep the company going and wish and work for a brighter future. Again, very tough time for the company. We're this close of closing it. Luckily, we went through it. We convinced some other investors. There was a vote at our board, and we ended up succeeding. But it was a tough time because we were talking with the guys that were in our board representing Banco Santander, representing GE Capital, representing JP Morgan, and the guys from Goldman were calling the CEOs of those companies to tell them, you have this shitty business in Latin America, shut it down, makes no sense. No, but I have a guy there that takes care of that investment and says that there might be a future there. No, he doesn't know anything, shut it down. So it was a tough time. Luckily, we went through it, and again, the rest is history. There are many other stories, like the site going down for 48 hours, and we're losing millions of things, data points in our database and everything. But several challenging times.
So I think it's safe to say, Hernan, that one of the real unique things about your approach at Kazakh is drawing upon this history as a founder and as an operator, and you bring that to establish a unique relationship with the founders that you back. Whether it's the near-death experience you just described, I imagine, sort of cash burn and preserving capital might be something that's top of your mind when you think of when you invest in companies today. What are some of the things that from your your Mercado Libre experience that you draw upon that always come to mind when you deal with your portfolio companies? Are there kind of one or two themes that you always say to your entrepreneurs, hey, you have to do X or Y?
No, so certainly history helps you or anchors you, and both things take in play when we moved from being entrepreneurs to being investors. We're always we're entrepreneurs, so we're very optimistic and think that things will go brighter, will be brighter in the future, and that plans will be accomplished. But we are reasonably optimistic, not crazy optimistic. So we always try to ask our entrepreneurs to trust, and this is a growth business, so you're always betting on the future, but do not assume that the future will be there waiting for you. You have to create that future. You have to get to that future. So again, invest for the future. There are sometimes times of aggressiveness, and you have to press the accelerator as much as you can. There are some other times that you have to be more careful, look around. There's this myth that the first to the market is the one that wins, and we don't think that. Some entrepreneurs are very focused on acquisition of users by investing aggressively in marketing, and we have an antibody that we don't like that. We like to be aggressive, but we prefer that a company invest ridiculously high amounts in creating the largest possible development team rather than investing in an amazing marketing campaign. And I think lots of things, but all related to invest in things that will be here in the future, and not those things that you invest today, but next day you start from zero again, and the next day. So if you have a great team of developers and you're overspending there, so what? The following day you still have those guys, and those guys have worked together, and they are even better the following day, and they might create better features, better product, better usability. So somehow you will be able to capture that. You invest a lot in marketing, and the following day there's nothing left, and you have to invest again in marketing and invest in marketing. So those are things that we try to push significantly. And related to that, there's a phrase that we use a lot with our companies. Whenever they come with aggressive marketing budgets, we say no, no, no. And whenever they are doing their IT plans, we tell them, you can never have too many developers.
Interesting. Maybe we can turn the discussion now to sort of investing across Latin America. Now, Brazil is still your biggest market in terms of where you're investing. So maybe where does Brazil fit in Latin America? And then maybe we could touch upon Mexico and Argentina, Colombia, some of the other markets where you've begun to make investments as well.
Sure. So if you go back 20 years, for some weird reason, at that time, Buenos Aires became, for a time, kind of the hub of technology innovation in Latin America. I think a little bit was the legacy of the 90s, when Argentina went through a time of a very open economy, where lots of global investors went into, when lots of global corporations went into the country. And if you compare what was the reality of Argentina from that aspect versus the rest of Latin America, probably it was more kind of connected with the rest of the world. So that's why I think Buenos Aires had an edge. I don't have to tell you what happened in Argentina afterwards, but basically populism destroyed all that. And at the same time, Brazil obviously is a larger market, kept on becoming larger in relative terms vis-a-vis Argentina. And also what Argentina experienced in the 90s started to happen a little bit in Brazil in 2002, 3, 4. The BRICS phenomenon also brought lots of attention on Brazil. And that consolidated the market that, on the one hand, was larger. So because of that, you would expect more opportunities to pop up there. And on the second hand, because it became interesting, so Brazilians that were studying abroad or had some experiences abroad would go back to Brazil. Even foreigners that were looking for opportunities saw Brazil as an interesting market, and they went to start businesses in Sao Paulo, Rio, or wherever. I think that consolidated a nice ecosystem. Today, Brazil, Sao Paulo in particular, but Brazil in general, is the most consolidated ecosystem in the region. We invest throughout Latin America. We're completely agnostic about the country. We just invest where we find best opportunities. As Andy was saying, in the first fund, we ended up investing 70% of our funds in Brazil. And again, on the one hand, you explain that because it's a larger market, but at the same time, we found better entrepreneurs, better opportunities. When we're launching our second fund, the first fund is 2011. So we invested that from 2011 to 2014, more or less. Second fund, 2014. When we were pitching for it, we were saying Brazil will continue to be the largest market, but we think that some other countries will emerge. We're seeing nice signs in Brazil, in Mexico, in Colombia. So I think that those markets will take off. It did not happen. So second fund, same thing. We ended up investing 70% in Brazil for the same reasons I described. And last year we raised our third fund. and we didn't say anything because we didn't want to be wrong many times. So we didn't say anything, and we said, no, we're going to invest throughout the region wherever we find the best opportunities. And for what it's worth, we've been investing out of that fund for almost a year and a half. And now it's 50-50. So 50% Brazil and 50% the rest of the region, with a significant weight coming from Mexico. So I think that finally Mexico is getting its act together. It makes total sense that it become the second largest market in the region after Brazil. And if you look at many industries, particularly consumer industries, Mexico is number 2 and sometimes even number 1 in Latin America. In the tech industry, they were not there, and now they're getting there, particularly around fintech, where we see very nice opportunities. Again, Brazil will continue to be the number 1, and I think that will be the case forever, but there'll be more opportunities in other countries as they become more mature, and also they start gaining critical mass.
And you have an office in São Paulo with Santi Fazzetti there. Is Mexico, how would you compare the ecosystems in Mexico to Brazil now? I kind of think of, you have probably 15 to 20 companies at scale in Brazil now. In Mexico, you have your kind of first 5 or 6 companies that are raised money internationally and starting to scale. So when you think of those two markets, how do they compare to each other?
So on the one hand, Brazil is larger. On the second hand, it is more matured. So what we see in Brazil is that our most successful companies are in the Series C, D, or even E stage. So clearly more matured, raising larger rounds. But it's exactly what you were describing. Now in Mexico, where we have a pool of 6-7 companies, and those companies, we typically invest in Series A. Sometimes we do seed, sometimes we do B, but our core is A. And our companies have gone to an extra round, so now they are at the B level. So in a few years, we will see probably those companies following the same route that our Brazilian companies did. And it's a similar phenomenon. So we have some of our founders in Mexico are founders that were working in the US, maybe were educated in the US, because now they are seeing that the time is right, go back to their country and start their companies, as has been the case of many of our companies in Brazil. And same thing, we have also some foreigners that have nothing to do with Mexico, but they look around the world and see where are there good opportunities, and they go to Mexico, as some of our founders in Brazil did. And some of our founders in Brazil are from foreigners doing business in Brazil. So the same dynamic is playing out. We have to wait a couple of years, maybe 4 years, to see if the same phenomenon happens in Brazil. But I think it is happening.
And then I guess relative to those two countries, and I know you've made invest obviously in your native Argentina, Colombia. How do you see the rest of LATAM relative to where you'll be investing?
Well, we say that in general terms, the Latin American ecosystem is evolving well. If we compare what we see today around the region versus what we saw 20 years ago, it's completely different. 20 years ago, you had nothing at all. As I said at the beginning, not even users. Now you have users, you have critical mass. Mobile internet has changed completely the landscape. And you have events like this one, where you have a room full of people somehow connected with the industry. You have entrepreneurs that have been working here and go back, that were there and came here. There are lots of funds, angel networks, seed funds, Series A funds, global funds looking for opportunities in Latin America. So you have a little bit of everything. So the ecosystem has evolved well. Still, it's a very young ecosystem, but moving in the right direction. Brazil is the one that has gone through more stages. The rest of the markets, we will get there eventually, and hopefully Brazil will keep on moving ahead of the pack. Because we want the whole region to keep on evolving well. But as the other markets have more users, start gaining critical mass, they also start creating a network of support for those entrepreneurs. You will see more opportunities. Today, if we had to rank them somehow, we would say Brazil number 1, probably Mexico number 2, Argentina, Colombia number 3, 4. But we have a few companies in Chile, for instance, that have done really, really well. We had a great investment in Uruguay that 3 entrepreneurs from Uruguay created a great company, scaled it throughout Latin America. We sold that company, but those entrepreneurs remain in charge of that business, and they keep on doing really well. So opportunities, you find them everywhere, but in general terms, markets are developed in that order that I gave you.
Okay, well, I'm going to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. I see hands already going up. I was going to say, think about your questions, but let me give Hernan to maybe spend just a couple minutes on what company are you really excited about in your portfolio? The one that jumps to my mind is probably Nubank. It gets an awful lot of press, unicorn, etc. But it doesn't have to be Nubank. Who are you really excited about in your portfolio?
Clearly, Nubank stands out. What they've done is amazing. When we met David, the founder, several years ago, and actually we had known him for years, because in our Mercado Libre days, one of the investors at the time of the IPO became General Atlantic, and he was working for General Atlantic and did due diligence on us. So there was a prior connection. But when he came and said, I want to build a bank in Brazil, we told him he was completely crazy. And there's no way you can win against that oligopoly of banks that are, we thought, protected by government and have some kind of hidden links with the central bank and will block anyone that tries to get into their terrain. And surprisingly, maybe I'm very contaminated because of my Argentinian past, but things are not like that in Brazil. So like if you go, and I don't want to have to tell you how things are done in Brazil and what problems Brazil may have, but for instance, you go and speak with the authorities of the central bank, and they are career people, very professional, trying to make the financial market more competitive. And they saw in Nubank a way to accomplish that. And Nubank has done an amazing job. And the kind of rating they get from clients is one that I think not many financial institutions can really accomplish. Now, I have several accounts in several banks. I hate them all. They are horrible. They just create problems.
Except for Silicon Valley Bank.
Of course. I'm talking about banks in Latin America. It's funny. Yesterday night, I went to one of my banks in Argentina because I had to do a transaction. And when I go there, my account balance was 0. And I knew it was not 0, but it was 0. And he's like, how come now we have a glitch in the system? Come on. And I couldn't pay what I had to pay, so I will probably have to pay it on Monday and with penalties. So what they're doing is amazing, and they've been able to build a team that is world class. But we have several other companies in the portfolio. Quinto Andar is a company we like a lot. Creditas, Logi, Gympass. So several companies that we really think are state of the art, and that hopefully will part of that new generation of businesses that will lead in the region in the future.
Well, as a funny aside, Hernan, in fact, it may have been one of your portfolio's companies, but we're having this conversation with a Brazilian company who was looking to put some money in some investments to earn a little more interest at the bank. And our investment specialist was explaining, oh, well, the investments would be very safe. They'd be invested in U.S. government treasuries, et cetera, very liquid. And the person on the phone said, oh, well, here in Brazil, we don't trust our government, so we're not sure that's such a good investment. But anyway, all right, so questions. Go on.
And then, so I cannot think of a company in Latin America with source revenue, pan-regional or local, that has the stock price trajectory that Mercado Libre has had in the last 10 plus years. I use it as a benchmark for the listed companies that I work with. What is the secret sauce that has made it so resilient to really economic trends, macroeconomic volatility, FX volatility? One question, and it's loaded. And two, when we look at other tech companies in the region, let's think about like Netshoes. What, and I imagine everyone here that's an entrepreneur is thinking about my exit, and one exit is an IPO. What, in your view, do the companies need to have in place to IPO successfully and look at a trajectory like Mercado Libre instead of like Netshoes?
Oh, so that's a tough question. I said I was the COO of Mercado Libre, but actually my last 3 years, when the company was public, I was the CFO, and I used to get those kind of questions from the analysts. So we should ask the current CFO of Mercado Libre to come on stage and answer your question. But I think that trying to be objective, one thing that Mercado Libre accomplished, and is clearly part of what we tried to build, probably also related to that tough experience that we had and made us really being obsessive about sustainability, is that we always focused on the long term. And whenever we had to make a decision about what's great for today versus what's great for tomorrow, we would go for what's great for tomorrow. The whole management team was very committed to a long term. So, as I told you, we went through very rough years in the internet. So in 1999, you would go to a party and say, I'm an internet entrepreneur, and you go, wow, how cool, I want to be like you. And 6 months later, you would go to a party and they would say, where do you work? Internet. And that was that, not just for it was like that for 3-4 years, and we didn't have much to show. It's not that, okay, you were not so excited with the internet, but you were working in a company that was doing really well. Nobody was excited with the internet, and the company was, had the revenues of the store at the corner, so nothing very relevant. But the whole team stayed. Actually, I left, my partner Nicolas left, but who took over my position was someone that was in the company from the first day. Who took over my partner's position, someone that was in the company for the first day. If you look at who are the key executives today, are those that have been making decisions for the company for the last 18 years. And I think that when we talk with our entrepreneurs, when a team works together for a long time and for the right reason, not because you are holding on bad management, but because the team interacts really well, they know what they have to do, that ends up creating a great, a very powerful formula. And also the business model of Mercado Libre being network effects, first within the marketplace, but now even more so with the payments platform and that, I think that helps. So at the beginning we had lots of competition and it was hard to differentiate from the others, but once we could reach leadership, that kept on reinforcing by the minute. So that helped big time. And in terms of your second question, what it takes to be a successful public company, I think first one is critical mass, clearly, and as time goes by, companies need to be larger before thinking of going public. When we went public in 2007, the company's valuation was roughly $800 million when we went public, when the IPO was priced. And today you don't see companies going public at those valuations, so probably would have gotten more financing from other private investors and would have gone public at $10 billion a few years later. So first, you need that critical mass. But second, you can not be so profitable, but you have to be growing at a really fast pace and really show that eventually with scale, you will be having a great net income. Or you have to have a decent growth rate, but with a very nice bottom line. If you don't have either, it's very challenging. So, and that's the tough situation in which some companies find themselves. Now they go public, but they are not growing a lot. So you grow 3, 4, 5%, 10%. You're not a growth company. And by the way, your net income is negative. So the market will not give you credit for any of those two things that you're not accomplishing.
The questions.
I was just like wondering, shifting from geographies, going to market segments, besides consumer, fintech that you already mentioned, what else excites you? And if it's more than one, what is the proportion? So basically, I'm like health, biotech, education, something besides fintech, which is something you already mentioned.
So what excites us is technology. So we think that technology is presenting us with the opportunity of disrupting lots of sectors, of doing new things that were not possible in the past, doing things better, more efficiently. So we're excited with technology in general. We invest a lot in marketplaces because obviously we have some background there. So whenever there's a platform that combines supply and demand, we like it, and there are all sorts of marketplaces. Fintech, because the region in general has a low penetration of financial services, and with the internet, with technology, you can do better credit scoring, you can do better distribution, you can be smarter about many things. So you can do many of the things that more traditional financial institutions could not accomplish without technology. But we've invested in education as well. So we have two companies in the portfolio that are related to education. One is Digital House, it's kind of a coding school, and another one is Open English, that now is Open Education because they started with English, but now they're also doing coding and other things. In health, we've also made some investments. Actually, we have a company, it's called Doctor Consulta, that is a network of primary care clinics in Brazil. We were looking into health because, again, we thought that technology could open a great opportunity there. We couldn't find any that you would say this is a technology company doing something in health. And we met Tomás, the founder of Doctor Consulta. And in 1 second, he convinced us that that was a terrific opportunity. He's a great leader, great entrepreneur with a tremendous vision. And initially, we would joke internally that it was a technology company because they had a few computers at the office. But the reality is that they put lots of technology into service to do things better, faster, more efficiently. They've also created a data play. So they have lots of data that they collect from their patients that go there. There are over 1 million now. And they can do things with that data that, for instance, pharma companies are very interested in. They are also, as I said, they develop lots of tools for the cycle that the patient goes through with them, from booking to getting into the clinics to getting information about whatever procedure is being done on them. And those tools are being also outsourced to other medical centers. So it became a great technology company, not only a healthcare company. And we've done enterprise software, so all across the board. You mentioned biotech. We looked into a few opportunities there. We haven't made a decision yet. We're close in a couple of cases. Probably it was because of ignorance. It's not our background. So whenever we're getting into an area that we don't know, we try to rely on someone else to complement our knowledge. And in those cases, we end up deciding no, but probably because we're not that comfortable there with marketplaces, with financial markets, where we're very comfortable. with those areas not that much. But for instance, we have a company called Notco, that is food technology company. It's an incredible company. What they do is they decompose molecularly food that comes from animals, and they recompose it with vegetables, with plant ingredients. They launched a mayo in Chile that has taken over 10% of the market with no advertising whatsoever, same price versus Hellmann's and the typical competitors, and obviously it's a mayo that doesn't have any eggs, and it's doing really well. They are about to launch milk that doesn't come from a cow, but looks, tastes, smells like milk, and they have several products that they'll be launching. They will be expanding into Brazil, into Argentina, also in the US. So we do a little bit of everything.
All right, maybe one more question.
First of all, as a vegetarian, I would like to know more about that company. My question is, you were mentioning your near-death experience in your company, and that you took money for granted and all that, and later you started to lay off a few people. So obviously, I'm assuming you figured out that there were a few things that you guys needed to focus on, and that you were not. So what was the lesson? What did you observe that you should be focused on that you were not before, and that was how you took your second chance?
So number one is what I said earlier. We over-focused on marketing, and we thought that it was a marketing battle and a battle about bringing users onto the platform, and it was much more about keeping users into the platform and getting them engaged. So it was much more about the product, the technology, the features, really adding value in sustainable things. So once you have a user inside your system and that user is satisfied and keeps on using it more and more, you're building something for the future. If you invest a lot in bringing users, but then those users have a poor experience or not a very exciting experience, they leave. So the following day you have to invest again there. So the first big mistake in a way was to overinvest in marketing, underinvest in technology. Happily, that happened early. So we realized about it even before we had 1 year as a company. So we changed that, and I think that because of that, that people that convert into a certain religion, they end up being even more advocate into that religion. So the same thing happened with us with technology. So we became big advocates of technology, and it was kind of an obsession to make sure that we would be a technology company, that whenever we had a problem, we were not going to throw people to the problem. We were going to think about it and see how we could solve it through processes, through technology, through data, and not through people. So that was one change that we had. And the other one is you cannot ignore market reality. So it is completely fine to invest money for a long while, and maybe the net result of a quarter, of a year, or even for a longer period is negative in terms of cash. But make sure it is because you're investing, and the growth margin at least is positive. Some companies hope have a very negative gross margin, and then they hope that with scale you will get to profitability, and that is hard. That is hard. So with scale, eventually your tech team will be applied instead of over 100 units, will be applied over 10,000 units. So that scales, and office space, or lots of things. But gross margin is more difficult. And I'm not saying that you don't have to be price aggressive at the beginning, but be conscious about sustainability. I think it's important. Sooner or later, reality catches up. We've seen many cases of companies that in private markets, they seem to thrive. And then when they go public, the analysts are more acid. And then it's not that easy to keep on justifying that burn for an eventual future growth. So again, I'm very bullish on the future. I'm very bullish on technology. I think that you have to invest for the future. That's more important than for today, but you cannot ignore it altogether.
Well, you can tell, Hernan, you lost a lot of sleep over that one, that sustainability issue during that near-death experience. So let's close off here. I have a quick speed round. I'm just going to ask you to respond with one-word answers, okay? So, Mercado Libre or eBay?
Mercado Libre. This is one word.
One word. Yeah, okay, yes. Mercado Libre or Alibaba?
It's like saying Argentina or Brazilian soccer. I will always say Argentina. So.
Bolsonaro or Marina?
Marina.
Messi or Ronaldo?
Do I need to answer that? Messi.
And finally, the venture opportunity in Latin America, rating from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what number would you assign it today, the opportunity in LATAM?
So I'll give you the quick answer first. That is probably 6, and it's 6 bad. No, I think it's good. 20 years ago it was 1, 2, so now it's 6. But we still have a very young ecosystem, so we need to prove many things. So I think that over the next 5 years we will move quickly to from 6 to 8 or 9, because some of those companies that are emerging will get to critical mass, will start showing exits. That is also something that the region lacks in a way, even though there have been a few great cases like Mercado Libre, PagSeguro, Globan, Decolar, but we need many more. So I think it's moving in the right direction, but we need to keep on working on it. We dedicate all our time and lots of our resources to that, so we're extremely bullish on it, and we have skin in the game. But it's still to be proven. Well, probably if you would have asked someone in China 10 years ago, they would have also said 6, and probably today they say, no, you never get to 10, but probably they would say 9. We need to keep on moving in the right direction to get there. So,
well, we'll look forward to that 9. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Hernan Kazak.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hernan and Andy. It was